Tom, as you know, I wrote critically of Ward 8 Councilmember and former Mayor Marion Barry's visibility in the Vincent Gray campaign, said a few things that may even be interpreted as mean-spirited, specifically referring to the former mayor and Newark Sharp James as disgraced former mayors. I knew that would upset Mr. Barry, so I also mentioned that I am personally fond of him, but that he would probably stop speaking to me. As you know, Marion Barry is not one to hold grudges, and rather than not speaking to me, he wanted to be able to say his piece. And that's why he's here today to talk about that, the election, his role, his vision for the city's future, and frankly, anything else he feels like. So I won't start with any questions. Mr. Barry, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Kojo.
You can just go ahead.
You don't. I hope you're not going to read that long speech you have in front of you.
I have Kojo's outrageous.
Oh, the article. That's the article.
Ridiculous, lightweight, beneath his dignity, beneath his character, kind of situation. I've known Kojo for probably
40 years.
40 years. He's been thoughtful. He's been well-researched. This was the lightest article I've ever seen him written.
Don't you think he should stick to radio?
I think he should. It was filled with inaccuracies, assumptions, statements that were beneath him. And I'm not just outraged. The majority of citizens in this city, I don't have any problem being criticized, being analyzed, but I have a problem when people tell lies, when they distort the truth, and they make statements. For instance, two disgraced mayor. There's not even white people in this town think I've been disgraced. I've done some things personally that were not good. I've been entrapped by the federal government, et cetera, et cetera. But even in that, there's been no convictions. You made allegations about me being a crack addict, and there's been no evidence of that. The jury voted 9-3 to throw out all those charges, and et cetera. So I think you ought to not to deprecate the good service that I have done.
Well, I did make reference in the piece to the Barry Revolution.
No, that's so general. What you needed to do is look at 31 years of public service in this town, where the majority of people in this town, both black and white, recognize and acknowledge that I've been a tremendous asset to this town. The downtown would not be developed going for the Barry administration. You would not have the Verizon Center. You would not have neighborhood centers there. You would not have job development. You would not have a budget middle class. You would not have anything like that. The issue in this campaign is not Marion Barry. You want to make it that. You're being silly like the other people are. When you try to link me with something that Marion Barry, Vincent Gray has approved, he's not Marion Barry. Marion Barry wouldn't have been in office for 16 years as mayor if I were that damn bad. You know, we did a lot of great things in this town. We made mistakes like other people make mistakes governmentally, but the mistakes I made or were made by others on me were personal, non-governmental. There is no way of looking at the D.C. government. For instance, take the finances. When I came in office in 1979, our money was in the treasury. Our books had not been balanced. It had not been audited. Nothing had happened. I moved us out of the treasury into our own local banks, our first audit in 100 years, and set us on the road to financial recovery. Take, for instance, the control board. I didn't create the control board. Sharon Pratt Kelly left $331 million of debt, and we had a Republican Congress. That's what did that. So I just think you're not being mean-spirited. You're being outrageously ridiculous and inaccurate about your analysis, which surprised me.
Well,
in fact, let me just say one other thing. In fact, when the article came out that day, Calvin, who's my nephew, who was your cameraman for many, many years,
Calvin Barry,
who's now second in command at Channel 26 because of the training that he got over at Channel 32, he called me and said, has Kojo lost his mind? Or has he lost his sense of history? What is wrong with him? He must have been, he was shocked. In fact, he was hurt.
Well, allow me to say why I said a number of the things that I said. It seemed to me that you had assigned yourself a fairly prominent role in the Gray campaign. I saw you debating Ron Moten on News Channel 8 on behalf of the Gray campaign, even though the Gray campaign apparently, on Channel 5, even though the Gray campaign, Fox Channel 5, even though the Gray campaign sought to assert that you were not representing it in that debate, I saw you prominently at a number of the Gray functions, and it served to remind me that you, despite all of the things you did and you said you did during your mayoral terms, are still in many respects a symbol of racial divisiveness in this city. It served to remind me that the last time you were elected mayor in 1994 and white voters seemed to object to it, you told them to get over it. And I didn't think that that was the kind of message that Vincent Gray wanted coming forward in his campaign. I did not say that you are a crack addict. I don't believe you are or ever were a crack addict. I said that after you were arrested for crack cocaine in 1990, you appeared on my broadcast on Howard University television, and that provided a significant boost in my image and in my ratings at the time. But I did not assert that you were addicted. I did use the term...
Wait
a minute. I did use the term disgraced former mayors.
That's right.
Because in my view, mayors who have been sent to jail for whether it was personal peccadillos or whether it was political fraud have been disgraced. You have returned from that disgrace to be reelected mayor and ward member for city council, but I think the term disgraced in that context is not incorrectly used.
Now, Kojo, you can't rationalize this in any way you want to rationalize it. There is no way that someone running for mayor of the District of Columbia would not want the support of a person who's had 16 years of mayoral experience, who's also had 31 years of experience in this town, and who any politician would welcome that. The great majority of voters in this town, particularly in the black community, my rating is about 65-70%, which means that I got 94% of the vote in Ward 8. Any politician worth his salt would welcome that kind of support. And Vincent and I talked long and hard about running for mayor. I started last spring. He's been my friend for over 35, 40 years. And it's wrong of you to deprecate that relationship. It's wrong of you to criticize that relationship. It's wrong of you to assert that he can be like I was in a negative way, when all I've done is done great things for this city in terms of governmentally. And also, the Gray campaign welcomed my support, and we talked about that support. And he on this debates, he said, if no other reason, I represent 70,000 people who are there. I'm very popular in this town. I'm less popular in the white community, but that's not my fault. I'm not. Wait a minute. Let me finish this.
I know the man you call Uncle Tom Sherwood wants to get in on this conversation.
Wait a minute. Say one thing about to get over it, Carl. What I said after I ran against Carol Schwartz, there were a number of people who were opposed to my candidacy. I said the first level of reconciliation is what counselors tell me, psychologists tell me. The first level of reconciliation between any two people or any two groups is to get over that which you have a problem with. That's what that meant.
Can I get in on that? Because I was there at that press conference. And and I'm not going to be this, I don't want to sound like I'm on his side too much, but I will say I was at that press conference. And what the mayor said when he was asked by a reporter, what do you tell the people in Ward 3 who voted heavily against you? Barry said, in his usual, disarming way, get over it. I'm going to be the mayor for all the people. The quote that got into the newspapers and on TV and other places was, get over it, as if it were in your face. So while it was a risky kind of thing to say in any event, I think the full sentence does count. But I do think...
And everything has to be seen contextually, but we're talking about perception, and perception
that's why I want to go
is everything.
To that.
And at least two columnists in this town described Vincent Gray in one way or another as Marion Barry light. When Vincent Gray walked into that town hall meeting in Ward 3 last night, I suspect that a lot of the people in that room were expecting, quote unquote, Marion Barry light. And it does not really matter who Marion Barry really is. What matters is their perception of who Marion Barry really is. And they thought that Marion Barry light meant that Vincent Gray was going to walk into that room and tell them to get over it. And what they saw was who Vincent Gray really is.